What are the best and worst matchups for your wide receivers, tight ends, and streaming defenses in fantasy football for week 17? Who are the players that we like most in the rankings, and who should you start and sit this week? Trying to break down right here, right now, as we get another matchup Thursday on Locked On Fantasy Football.
Are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast. As usual, I'm your host, Vinnie Iyer, and whenever I do this, I'm writing about NFL and fantasy football, breaking down the league from a betting and fantasy perspective for sportingnews.com. Check it out there. All the latest we have there leading you into the games of Week 17. We've got sleepers and bust picks, as well as my decider column where we break down all the positions, rank them up with the players, and give you the start-sit advice on the other guys that you need to think about in your lineups or want to avoid in your lineups. So we'll do that again here for wide receivers, tight ends, and streaming defenses for Week 17. If you missed the quarterback and running back breakdown, that's up on the previous show, so check that out. This episode of Locked On Fantasy Football is brought to you by Prize Picks. It's Crossover Thursday on the network, where we have our hosts of the teams that are playing each other this week to break down those games. And Prize Picks is our sponsor for that, bringing it to you. Prize Picks also brings you so much fun, and it's easy to play. No competing with other players, just you versus projections available. Pick 2 to 6 players. They score more or less than their Prize Picks projection. You can win up to 10 times your money on your entry. It'll literally take less than 60 seconds to enter. It's that easy. We love Prize Picks, and we know you will too. We'll have our Prize Picks of the week here on Friday's show on Locked On Fantasy Football. First-time users, if you're just getting into Prize Picks, can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code LOCKEDON. That's prizepicks.com. Promo code LOCKEDON. That's all caps there. Check it out. Prize Picks is a lot of fun, and this is a way to get in now here and play it here for the final couple weeks of the 2022 regular season to get warmed up for the playoffs. Thanks for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen today. We're free and available to you on all platforms. Let's dive right into our first segment here. We'll look at the wide receiver rankings. These are the players that we think are easy calls here in our lineup. Regardless of the matchup, we're just going with the talent. We just trust these guys the most. Justin Jefferson is that guy, number one. What a big year for him. Cooper Cup-like numbers, just minus the touchdowns from last year. He's going to keep it going against that Packers secondary on the road. We saw Jalen Waddle go off against the Packers. So that's good news for Jefferson. Tyreek Hill, Waddle's partner, is number 2. The Patriots banged up secondary. They can struggle a lot with speed receivers inside and out. So Tyreek Hill comes in at 2 there for Teddy Bridgewater or Tua Tagovailoa. We're feeling Bridgewater right now with the concussion issue with Tagovailoa, but it doesn't matter. Tyreek Hill is number 2. Jamar Chase will rebound against the Bills and have a big game. He was pretty solid last week. He was the focus of the Patriots defense to some degree. Just hard to contain Chase when there's so many other weapons involved. So I have him at number 3. A.J. Brown keeps it rolling with Gardner Minshew against the Saints there this week at home. CeeDee Lamb, great matchup. The Titans secondary is banged up. They could be resting any of the injured players already. So CeeDee Lamb working the slot, working all over the field on the Titans. Love him at number 5 after a nice game. Big game last week against the Eagles. Amon-Ra St. Brown, this is one of his blow-up games at home against the Bears. You can destroy them in the slot. So I do like him in the top 6, a top half. Wide receiver 1 this week. Stephon Diggs, tough game last week against the Bears. You were expecting a lot more because it was the Bears defense, but the Gabe Davis scoring game, it was a Dawson Knox scoring game. There's other people getting involved, especially in the running game. I think you'll have to see a lot more targets this week against Eli Apple and that secondary, Cam Taylor-Britt of the Bengals this week. He comes in number 7. Devontae Adams was also frustrated in that Steelers matchup. 49ers matchup isn't all that much better up front here, the pressure and all that, but I think there's going to be some time for garbage production as we saw with the Commanders last week. John Waddle doesn't drop out of the top 10 after his fine performance there. He's been outstanding all year, good value. Behind Hill in fantasy football, they get the Patriots. The Patriots, again, banged up secondary. Do like Waddle quite a bit. DK Metcalf, being a little bit cautious with DK. I think we'll see if Tyler Lockett can return, but this Jets secondary is legit with Sauce Gardner and DJ Reed, the former Seahawks. A little bit concerned there, the way things were contained last week, a little bit with the Chiefs. And if there's no Lockett, the defensive emphasis is going to be there. So Metcalf is just so good. He's at number 10, but I would not be surprised if he disappointed this week. Keenan Allen comes in there against the Rams. He's been lighting it up. The Rams do struggle in the slot quite a bit, so I like Allen to produce in that matchup, playing a lot inside. Chris Godwin rounds out the wide receiver ones in 12-team leagues. Chris Godwin doing a number on the Panthers. Panthers, again, they'll be weaker inside here. That's where you exploit them usually, but no, J.C. Horn also says Godwin can have some success in other areas of the field, so Godwin comes in. He's the most trusted receiver right now for Tom Brady. Devonta Smith coming off this heater, the 2 touchdowns against the Cowboys. He is at number 13 and has really dropped below a high-end wide receiver 2 status at all. T. Higgins, same deal against the Bills, should be productive after coming through nicely against the Patriots last week. Christian Kirk should work the middle of the field against that zone defense. We talked about it. That's how you attack the Texans, a little bit more on the inside. So Kirk, do like him. DeAndre Hopkins, that was a terrible game last week. Only 1 catch for 4 yards. A lot of it was Trace McSorley on 10 targets. So he's still getting the target share. That'll add up to a lot better production, assuming Colt McCoy can be returned from concussion protocol this week. Garrett Wilson, they can scheme him in the middle of the field. The tough Seahawks secondary there with Tariq Woolen, the rookie that's been also pretty good. But Garrett Wilson, guy that maybe they can get a move around the scheme a little bit and get him open here for Mike White. So he's coming in still as a wide receiver 2. Terry McLaurin doesn't sit to the Pro Bowler. He's had a fine year and he's doing a little bit more scoring. Does hurt that Carson Wentz comes back, because Wentz feed McLaurin the same way that Taylor Heinicke did, but still he's there. The matchup is good enough against the Browns. Mike Williams against the Rams. Could see a little bit of Jalen Ramsey, but could avoid that in certain situations. So still have him as a wide receiver 2 at 19. Jerry Jeudy lit up the Chiefs. We're going to be a little bit conservative with this one here in the rematch there. I don't see the 3 touchdowns happen again. Really, it's hard to project that duplication for anyone. So maybe 1 score and a decent yardage day for Jerry Jeudy. He still comes in the wide receiver 2. Mike Evans, again, this guy is frustrating. He's just not lived up to expectations. His temperature's off of Tom Brady, but remember that big play that Evans just dropped against the Buccaneers Panthers game the first time. So watch out for that again, especially without Horn. That's going to really help. They need to get Evans going. This could be finally the week. We've said that for a while, but he's a guy that you just want to sit because he could explode anytime. Gabe Davis, look, everyone is down on Gabe Davis's season, but he's been a pretty good wide receiver 2, and that's where you drafted him, and that's where you're going to take him. Great. The volume of receptions is not high, but the yardage is. Touchdowns are very favorable here, so that's what you expected from Gabe Davis, just some complimentary numbers from Stephon Diggs. You weren't expecting him to kind of world beat here. You didn't think he was going to exceed Diggs' expectations, but you do see him as a solid wide receiver 2 in his production, so that's why he's in the lineup every week here for you. That's why we really haven't taken him off. I mean, he's always a threat to score a touchdown. He's still involved quite a bit, so he comes in at number 22 here. So nearly covering all the wide receiver 2s with our guys that we like the most this week, and no-brainer plays. We'll get into some other plays that are pretty strong, and also tell you the guys to avoid here in our next segments here on Locked On Fantasy Football. And then we'll look at the tight end rankings, start and sit advice there, as well as defensive advice there for rankings and start sits. A lot to come here on Locked On Fantasy Football. This episode is brought to you by Audible. Audible is releasing a slate of new football podcasts that we're sure you're going to love. That's why you'll be able to find an episode of The League available as a bonus episode on Locked On NFL. And The League is special because it has 2 great narrators here. Super Bowl champion, legendary smack talker, Richard Sherman, as well as sports broadcaster and rising star in the industry, Taylor Rooks. Yeah, those are 2 great voices. League is an 8-part documentary series about the most bizarre, inspirational, and unlikely stories connected to America's favorite sport, pro football. You want to miss these untold stories spanning from the 1940s through the present. The bonus episode you can check on now is called The Way of the Cowboy. It's an incredible story of how the 1977 Dallas Cowboys brought in Bruce Lee's protege to teach their defense martial arts, ushering in a new approach in the way the league trained. Each story offers equal parts history, entertainment, and social commentary. It is fantastic listen, so check it out. Now head over to Locked On NFL for a bonus episode of the league or catch the full series wherever you get your podcasts available now. Audible, get in the game. Thanks for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen every day. Make sure you check out Locked On Sports Today, the biggest stories around the sports world in 20 minutes or less, plus instant reactions, game recaps, and Locked On's take of the day. Locked On Sports Today, available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. All right, let's continue the show here on Locked On Fantasy Football and look at our wide receiver starts and sits at the position. These are more borderline players that we're not sure about this week, and we're going to answer those questions now. DJ Moore coming through at Sam Darnold. He likes that connection quite a bit. The Buccaneers secondary reeling. DJ Moore stays in your lineup as a wide receiver 3. Amari Cooper. It's Cooper, Donovan Peoples-Jones. It's been almost impossible to figure out which receiver is going to do damage, but I'm starting to feel Cooper and Deshaun Watson have got it going. Peoples-Jones is the deep threat. The Commanders have started to contain that with their pass rush. So I look at Cooper being the more evolved guy, just beating the coverage here and the pressure for the Commanders this week for Deshaun Watson, similar to playing out what we saw against the Saints and Dennis Allen's scheme last week. Brandon Ayuk, you look at him and look at the Raiders matchup. It's fantastic on the outside. Ayuk had a solid game last week to rebound. I think it's a good chance for him to return to the end zone and make a big play here against the Raiders with no Deebo Samuel again. Cortland Sutton, he missed out in the first matchup against the Chiefs. He'll make up for lost time against those young corners and be rather productive, at least with garbage production. Now, we're operating as if Christian Watson's not going to play. He's day-to-day with a hip injury. He's ruled out pretty quickly against the Dolphins. So I think they're on the side of caution. They do have enough depth there. So that should help Allen Lazard here be effective. Again, really, without Watson, Lazard is a trusted guy. We've seen it. Lazard has kind of faded as we've seen Watson and Dobbs take over, but great matchup against the Vikings this week. Good chance to find the end zone again for Lazard. George Pickens, I do like him because Marcus Peters banged up for the Ravens, didn't miss last week. You had the fellow rookie Drake London doing well. Pickett found Pickens in the end zone last week, so we like the rookie-to-rookie Kenny Pickett to George Pickens connection, so I do like that. Adam Thielen, the Vikings, again, he seems to always have the Packers number, finds a way to score inside against them quite a bit here, so that's why I'm going to Adam Thielen to get back in the end zone. Greg Dortch was involved quite a bit, so I think you're looking at him and DeAndre Hopkins dominating targets in that Falcons matchup that's very favorable this week. Hunter Renfrow, the slot can be yielded some points to against the 49ers. So garbage time, I think you'll see a lot of Hunter Renfrow and Darren Waller working in the middle field where Devontae Adams might be able to contain. Michael Gallup scored last week. He looked a little bit better. It's hard to know with Noah Brown and Michael Gallup, but the matchup here against the Titans is fantastic on the outside. So Gallup could easily get in the end zone here again, working off Lamb and Schultz for Dak Prescott. Jahan Dotson is on the radar again this week. What a big year for the rookie when he's been healthy. So I do like Jahan Dotson to come through against the Browns this week. Again, he's a big playmaker. So you look at, and the numbers say that he can have some success here as the Browns secondary not all that reliable. Even if Denzel Ward's struggling, Ward will probably be on McLaurin. So you have some opportunities on the outside with Greg Newsome to make some plays for Dotson. So other receivers I like this week, I do like Drake London quite a bit against the Cardinals secondary. He's really heated up with Desmond Ridder, the fellow rookie this week. So that is good to see for Drake London. He's only at 4,900. You look at it, Romeo Doubs, also 4,700. Good price for this rookie. Could have a prominent role against the Vikings with Watson hurting here. So you love those prices, 4,900, 4,700 there that you can look at in DraftKings tournaments. We'll get into more on why there, where you want to pivot and go for the cheaper ones. And DJ Chark as well against the Bears at home this week. Really like him. So some numbers that we're looking at a little bit deeper that I would look at in DFS there, but also deeper leagues, you can look at London, Dobbs, and Chark this week. We'll get in again our complete DFS picks there, but those three guys stand out as very good values and maybe underused players and seasonal as well this week. Let's go to the wide receivers that we can avoid this week. I don't like any of the Chiefs. Kadarius Toney did score last week, but not much else. Juju Smith-Schuster didn't look all that good last week. Marcus Valdes-Scantling got blanked. This is just not a Chiefs wide receiver core I want to invest in or trust, especially against the Broncos and Pat Surtain too. Even though Smith-Schuster been working the slot and just not go there. Zay Jones, Not feeling with Zay Jones this week. Again, the Texans are pretty good on the outside. They're vulnerable on the inside. You got to have those zone beaters, and Kirk and Ingram are those type of players, so I'm not going there. Deontay Johnson, I think he could get the Marlon Humphrey treatment there because they move him around the scheme for Matt Canada. So I do like Humphrey to shut down Johnson. I do not like Johnson this week. Marquise Brown, we learned that he was benched because he missed team meetings there. So this guy is a little bit diva-ish here, and we've seen the actions in Arizona so far. He's just not going to get it done with the quarterback change. It doesn't matter if it's McCoy or McSorley. They're just not going to get to the ball down the field to him. So I do like Greg Dortch and DeAndre Hopkins a lot more getting involved as the more possession guys, short to intermediate route runners who can get open versus Brown. He needs a big play to develop, and that may never come against these guys. Looking at Donovan Peoples-Jones, again, the big play element, the Commanders have really cut that out of their lineup, so not going to trust Peoples-Jones against that secondary. Darius Slayton, you can't trust him. You saw Richie James or Isaiah Hodgins go off last week. Slayton was nowhere to be found. I'm not trusting Slayton at all against the Colts. Second this week, Jacoby Myers, oh boy. I don't know what's holding in the future for Jacoby Myers, but I don't think it's going to be New England after that lateral mess up. I know you had that wacky tip ball type touchdown last week against the Bengals, but I'm not trusting Jacoby Myers at all in this game against the Dolphins. I actually feel a little bit better about Kendrick Bourne if you're really desperate for a Patriots receiver this week. Brandon Cooks playing against the Jaguars. I just don't trust Brandon Cooks or Chris Moore. Cooks got away with a touchdown last week. It could not happen maybe this week. Against the Jaguars, Joshua Palmer just not a factor here with Mike Williams and Keenan. For the Chargers, Tyler Boyd not a factor as much as Jamar Chase, T. Higgins. And now Trenton Irwin making plays for the Bengals. So there you have it. There's a look at your wide receiver starting six. Now we'll get into the tight end rankings. These are the no-brainers that you're going to look at. And there's more no-brainers than you think at this late stage of season. Go figure. It's been a messy position all season long, but now there's more options than ever. Travis Kelce at home against the Broncos. Broncos really starting to struggle against the tight end, so I love Kelce. There, George Kittle on a heater as well. He scored multiple touchdowns now in a couple games of late. So you look at Kittle, good matchup against the Raiders, feeling with Brock Purdy. A matchup, T.J. Hockenson is on fire. He had a couple touchdowns last week for the Vikings. They get the Packers this week. Packers, by the numbers, are good against the tight end, but Hockenson is more of a wide receiver type hybrid. They'll get him involved with Jefferson and Thielen this week, and I bet there's a good chance 2 out of 3 of those guys will hit the end zone for Kirk Cousins. Evan Ingram, blitz and beater in some regards. This time he's a zone cover 2 beater, I should say, against the Texans. So either way you look at it, Ingram can get the job done. He's had 3 great weeks in a row here to emerge as a tight end 1 of the season. Big renaissance season for the former Giant. And he'll keep it going at Houston. Though Mark Andrews falls to number 5. Very frustrating because if you got Mark Andrews, you don't want to mess with other tight ends. At least he's healthy, he's out there making some big plays. You want a little bit more. If Lamar Jackson comes back, that's going to help his value for sure. But it's been disappointing with Andrews in the second half of the season, that's for sure. Dallas Goedert looked pretty good in his return last week. The Saints are pretty tough against the tight end, but they'll get it in, keep him involved with Gardner Minshew this week. Pat Freiermuth with a nice rebound, leading the Steelers in receiving yards against the Raiders. Decent matchup this week against the Ravens, who are tougher with secondary, we mentioned. That could open things up for Freiermuth as the kind of versatile receiver that trusted on the inside by Kenny Pickett. Darren Waller has had 2 pretty solid games. The 49ers are pretty good against the tight end, but again, Waller and Hunter Renfrow should see a lot of open space there as the 49ers play the lead in that one. So there you have it. There's a look at the tight ends, 8. So we actually have 8 viable tight ends we somewhat feel good about here going into week 17. That's just shocking to me, but that's why you have to stick with it throughout the season. Don't make any assumptions about certain positions, and the tight end definitely has come back strong here late in the year. So good stuff there all around with that position. Now, we will get into our tight end starts and sits as well as our defensive recommendations all across the board with our rankings. Starts and sits for that position. We'll do that in our final segment. I do have to tell you about Bet Online, and we had our title betting sponsor here, Bet Online. They've come through for us quite a bit with their number 1 source for sports betting information, stats, and analysis. You get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from pro football to college bowl season to basketball and World Cup. They've got it all covered at betonline.net. If you love sports podcasts like listening to this one or any one in the Locked On Network, you can find those at betonline as well. They're always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting information. This is a good time of year to get that. The bowls are here. We've got 2 last weeks of NFL regular season, NBA, NHL in full swing. You want to have all the information at your fingertips as quickly as possible. So betonline.net is going to help you with that. Head to the website today or use a mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. Did you know that driving high is considered driving under the influence? That's right. Driving under the influence of marijuana is against the law in every state, even in states where marijuana is legal. That means driving high could get your DUI. If you think law enforcement officers can't tell when you're driving high, you're wrong. Your friends can tell. Your coworkers can tell. Even your parents can tell. Everyone can tell. So what makes you think that law enforcement officers don't know when you're driving high? Driving under the influence of marijuana can slow your response time and change how you perceive time and speed. So even if you think you're fine to drive when you're high, you're not. Because the bottom line is, if you feel different, you drive different. And driving high is driving under the influence. So remember, drive high, get a DUI. Paid for by the NHTSA, that's the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. All right, it is time to close the show here on Locked On Fantasy Football with the rest of our tight end recommendations here. Starts at 6, and then we'll go into the defenses. At tight end, Dawson Knox is feeling it here with Josh Allen of late. He's trusting him as really the second target behind Stephon Diggs, really third guess looking at 2A and 2B between him and Gabe Davis. So Knox is starting to produce again. So another viable tight end to look at here, and he's going to have a good chance to score against the Bengals again this week. Dalton Schultz, the Titans give up quite a bit of production to the tight end. He had a decent game last week. We're worried about the Peyton Hendershot and Jake Ferguson cut in there, but Schultz, the regular, should be pretty active against the Titans as the Cowboys try to get a win to try to put some pressure on the Eagles there who play this weekend as the Cowboys get a chance on Thursday night. Taysom Hill, we know we're not playing him as a tight end. We're playing him more as a running back to complement Alvin Kamara. Big game last week against the Browns. He'll be involved against the Eagles for sure. Eagles, one of the first teams he played, remember, against Jalen Hurts as a key starting quarterback and had some success. So similar type defensive scheme here. They can attack. Cole Kmet, we do like him. He had good success in the first matchup against the Lions. CJ Uzomah did cut in a little bit to Tyler Conklin, but I think he's the guy that you want to use a little bit more if you're the Jets with Mike White back against the Seahawks, who are the cheat code for the tight end. Looking at Cade Otton. Otton had a good game the first time against the Panthers. They're going to involve him a little bit more. I think there's a good chance he gets to the end zone against the Panthers this week, the rookie from Washington. Look at the weaker starts this week. I know George Kittle came through this matchup, but it's George Kittle, David Njoku, not that type of player. Did not come through in a tough matchup against the Saints last week. I don't see it happening against the Commanders this week. Tyler Higbee, 3 touchdowns the past 2 weeks, including a couple from Baker Mayfield against the Broncos last week, and they also scored against the Packers, but I'm not trusting Tyler Higbee too much here. Could block a little bit more. The Chargers could have Joey Bosa back, and that could disrupt a lot of things with the way the Rams want to operate their offense this week, and be run heavy here with Cam Akers for sure with Baker Mayfield. Greg Dulcich, I'm not trusting him. He had a hamstring issue at the end of that game last week against the Rams. I'm not going to put him in against the Chiefs this week. No Fant, again, he's been relying on touchdowns quite a bit. I know the Jets did give a big game to Evan Ingram, but I'm not feeling it too much. Will Dissly, however, is gone and out of the mix here. He's on IR with a knee contusion. So it helps Fant's chances a little bit, especially if Tyler Lockett can't return. But he's touchdown dependent. That's what you have to deal with here against the Jets. Gerald Everett has been phased out as well with Joshua Palmer. It's been a lot of Allen Williams again for the Chargers with Austin Eckler, so I'm not going to trust him against the Rams. And Juwan Johnson didn't get the touchdown. If he doesn't do that, there's not much there. Eagles don't give up a lot to the tight end in the way of that, so we're not going to play Juwan Johnson this week. Again, tight end you want to play from the Saints. He's the running back. His name is Taysom Hill. Taysom Hill this week for that position. All right, let's go to the defensive recommendations. 49ers, well priced in DFS. We'll get into that on Friday's show, line of Friday. At home against the Raiders, a good spot there. You look at on the road against the Raiders, but it's going to feel like a home game in Las Vegas. So a lot of 49ers fans are likely going to make the trip. The Cowboys playing at the Titans. The Titans could be a shell of an offense here around Malik Willis, so that's good. The Eagles playing versus the Saints at home. The Ravens hosting the Steelers in primetime. That's great. The Chiefs against the Broncos and that really offense with Russell Wilson. Patriots at home against the Dolphins. They'll have a good chance to get some turnovers versus Teddy Bridgewater, Tua Tagovailoa. You look at the Buccaneers at home against the Panthers. I think the Panthers are going to struggle, be a lot like that Steelers game a couple weeks ago. And the Jaguars playing at the Texans, forcing some mistakes here from Davis Mills. Jeff Driscoll, Giants at home against the Colts. Dick Foles looked awful. The Giants pass rush should have some success in that one. The Jets should get some pressure on Geno Smith with Abraham Lucas missing the game. So potential there. So the two New York teams back in play. Chargers hot. We said that Joey Bosa might return to help that pass rush against the Rams and Baker Mayfield this week. So that would be pretty big here for the Chargers. Commanders at home against the Browns. That's a good spot here. You got the Steelers on the road against the Ravens. If they get Tyler Huntley, still a low-scoring, ugly game. But T.J. Watt and Minka Fitzpatrick can make plays. Speaking of the Watt brothers, J.J. Watt announced his retirement. He's going to be motivated to put up some numbers for the Cardinals in Atlanta. You look at the Lions at home against the Bears. Justin Fields did throw pick six in the first matchup if you're desperate there. Did not work out, however. Playing them against the Panthers on the road, I think they're a little bit better home defense anyway, the Detroit Lions. Weaker starts. Any defenses playing the Bills-Bengals game? Bills against Joe Burrow. Bengals against Josh Allen. We're not going there this week. Looking at the Dolphins at the Patriots. No, I think the Patriots will protect the ball, run it pretty well. Dolphins defense simply not that great. Rams had a big performance last week against Russell Wilson. It's not going to happen against Justin Herbert this week. You're looking at the Packers at home. The Vikings are going to put up some points in that one. I don't trust the Packers at all that situation after the 3-interception performance against Tagovailoa last week. The Panthers are on the road and not going to play them, even though the Buccaneers offense is a little bit struggling. Seahawks at home against the Jets, not going there with Mike White returning instead of Zach Wilson. And the Falcons might be tempting to play them against Colt McCoy. I'm not going to think about it all in that one. The Falcons defense just not simply good enough here. So that's how we break it down here for you. So that's a comprehensive look. That's pretty much all the defenses that might be in play in your head that we've made a call on for you this week on Locked On Fantasy Football. Thanks for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first of the day. Now make Locked On Sports Today your second listen. Peter Bukowski brings you the biggest stories from around the sports world in 20 minutes. Get the analysis and opinions before anyone else. Our local and national experts and insiders. Locked On Sports Today podcast available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. That's the end of the show. This has been Locked On Fantasy Football, hosted by Vinnie Iyer. Good luck if you've got the Cowboys and Titans going tonight, and we'll catch you there on Night of Friday to break down DFS and the injury updates for Week 17 Saturday or Sunday games this week.